Well, this is the first time we've had two people involved in the study, and we were able to finish it off in about twice as fast as we ever have. Even though we got a late start, 2 or 3 months late, really. We were hoping to do it in 12 months, and we really only had about 9 months to do the project. But we're finished it right on schedule, so that worked out really great with having two people. I've been involved in all of this projects. Shauna's first one, she jumped right in and did a great job on it. All right, just a quick review. You guys know this better than I do, but why is research important? Utah's population is growing like crazy. After the pandemic, it really picked up again, traffic volumes, heavy vehicle congestion. Utah's geological location is crucial. It's called the crossroads of the West for a reason. We've got a lot of interstates running through the state, so we have a national aspect. The state's made up of cities, suburbs, and very rural country, and so all of that has to be taken into consideration. Very delicate environment and endangered species that need to be protected, which is part of your charge. Then you have to support different kinds of traffic like mining and energy development, long haul traffic. Actually, the short hauls are the ones that violate the weights the worst, which is an issue. Transportation budgets and manpower are always challenged. This kind of benefit cost studies have a very strong history in the division. We've done 6 of them over a 28-year period with a few gaps in there. All of them except the very first one have been conducted by outside consultants. I did that first one. I'll still do that. One of the most important things, of course, is the benefit cost ratio. It's been estimated. And then we talk about possible process improvements that could be recommended, implementation strategies, which is really a big item for me. I guess you've noticed. And then some feedback on individual projects. So here's the benefit cost ratios from the previous studies. So you can see that in general, the benefit cost ratios have increased, and 26 is a very good number. And not only has the quality, the benefit cost ratios increased, also your volume of work, which is kind of impressive. If you look at the number of deliverables, those have increased per year as you go pretty dramatically. So the volume of work's really pumped up, which is also something you should be proud of. And then this gives the graphical view of that 6 right there. Hello, Nathan. How are you?
Great. How are y'all? Sorry, we ran a little long in our budget challenges.
No problem. I'm just going to jump back one slide. Here are the studies, the 6 studies that we've done in the past. And the benefit cost ratios are along the right column there. And the research and innovation division has really performed well, especially in recent years. And their benefit cost ratios are rising. It's really impressive. Also, the middle column shows the number of projects, the volume of work, and that's 73 deliverables over a 3-year period is pretty impressive. So the volume of work and the quality of work have both gone up over the years. Here's the benefit cost ratio versus time for the 6 studies. Definitely jumped up. That low one in the middle was kind of really poor. I think it was only 37% survey returns on that one. So we're kind of disappointed with that study, but in general, they've jumped up. And here are 4 factors that I think that the research program has contributed to that increase. The quality of the workshop, your problem statements, just looking through them, are better than they've ever been. So, and your project selection process was really really valid and good and has improved. The deliverables are definitely, the quality is definitely better over time. And your management of your projects is pretty stellar, I think. So there's the 4 factors we think of cost benefit cost ratios to go up over time. But also the benefit cost studies that we've done have also contributed to it. When you get high end user response with your surveys at 68%, that's a good sign. The new survey we've used through Google Forms has really made it easier for the people filling out the surveys. It's really aided them and made it a lot more user friendly. So that's definitely a big improvement. And then with 2 of us, the outreach to end users has improved. We've gotten better at going out and talking to people and asking them critical questions and getting their feedback and making sure their answers are correct and conservative. And then we've improved the verification methods to make sure their numbers are valid. So let's have Shauna jump in. She was heavily involved in the survey, and so she can address these next slides. Let me know when you want to change the slide.
Okay. So basically, I think the research staff already knows a lot of these numbers, but Nathan, you're looking at this for the first time, so you might have some questions. But basically, everything I'm about to present has been from the questions that we've sent out in the survey and the answers that have been received from the survey that we sent out. So basically, we sent out 73 surveys, which is the deliverables, and they are equal to 57 projects. So, and then out of those 73 surveys, we ended up getting 50 of them returned, which is 68%. And I think that's pretty high. That's a good return. But of course, next year or the next time we do this, we want to continue to increase and make sure everyone understands the importance of completing this survey. 34 of those surveys estimated came back with benefits. So 47% of the surveys that came back had benefits, and the rest of them didn't. And that's because they probably didn't understand how to calculate, and we'll get to that later. Then we compiled the grade scores, and we'll go through how we came up with the grades and the definitions as we get further into our presentation. And we measured the success and came up with deliverables. And one of the best things we had that Joni created was Google Forms that provided real-time feedback. So every time someone filled out a survey, I had that information, and I was able to get back with them and make that, and communicate with the people who are filling out the survey and make sure it's correct and verify it. So these are the different benefit types that were in the survey questions, and there were 7 of them. The first one is asset improvements. Second one is user impacts. You can read those. Safety, cost savings to UDOT, environmental and wildlife policy administration, institutional knowledge.
And I should point out that first one, asset improvements, in the presentation and the final report, we've broken that down even further to the type of asset that they were. So if a structures guy was filling out the survey, his asset was obviously structures or foundation. If it was a pavements guy, obviously he's talking about pavements. So we were able to break down that number one even finer as we reported the findings.
Also, it's important to point out that one project one survey return could have benefits in more than one of those types. So it could have asset benefits and cost savings to UDOT or into institutional knowledge. The other benefit is benefits as a portion of a larger program, and we'll explain that, and benefits related to cost avoidance. That's very important. We got a lot of those. This is the benefits as a portion of a program. Let me explain this one.
Sure.
You can explain this better.
So this is something we added for the last two studies, which really helps people understand what we're looking for when they fill out the survey. So if they're working on, say, a design or something, and the research division contributes to it, but they didn't do the whole program, then the research, we're allowing them to say, we're giving them the opportunity to say, research contributed 10% or 20% of the changes in the program, and so we're able to get the dollars out. So the programs impacted are construction, design, safety, maintenance, etc. And then under that, research may have contributed just a portion under that program, such as a spec or a design or some kind of a thing like improved impact of barriers, that kind of thing. So that really helped the person filling out the survey to understand what we're looking for. And I think it really helped them to give us what we're looking for.
And we also had an example of what we meant by that because it was hard to understand. So we basically said if your program was like 80 million in benefits over 5 years and they had 1 to 3% of the method that was contributed from research, then we took the lower percent, which is 1% because we want to be conservative. And that's 0.8 million in benefits.
Any questions about that example? And we provided quite a few examples in the report, and we felt like we need to put some examples in the survey as well so that people can relate to what we're looking for.
From actual projects. Here's another benefit, and you can see it in graph form, and these are actual projects that we got benefits from. If they would have not done what they did, they would have spent the amount of money in the yellow. And because of research, they're down here in the blue. And the delta is the value that is the cost savings from cost avoidance.
It doesn't really show what the units are, but I don't know if that was.
No, it's just an example. Okay. I could give you, I could give you some actual numbers on this example. So I did
Oh,
this.
you didn't put that.
No,
Oh, okay. We have those. You
yeah,
have those in your graph, in your spreadsheet too.
I can give you actual numbers from this example.
Yeah. So here's just it's benefits related to cost avoidance. It's an example of what I just said in that graph. You went through this one.
Yeah, Eisenberger and I did this study, and this was non-consent towing. And the tow industry was trying to shame the UDOT into increasing their towing fees and storage fees at the yards for disabled vehicles. When there's a crash, bringing a disabled vehicle off of a highway. And so Eisenberger and I did a study for about a year, and we found that there was no reason for an increase. It's kind of interesting. When we presented it, there was opposing views in the room. We had about 40 or 50 people there. About 10 of them were from the insurance industry. And they didn't want to see an increase, of course. And they were very quiet. And when we came with our conclusions that we didn't think that they deserved an increase, the insurance guys just nodded their head and walked out. They were happy. And we didn't really get that much negative feedback from the towing industry because we made our case so validly. And so we recommended that they just go to a national inflation trends to get their increases. And we brought those from, there's a national trends that you can download to use.
And there's so many examples of those, that we can sit here and talk about for days, but that's one. And there's a few others we talked about earlier. Conservative benefits estimate. And that's what I was talking about when they said 1 to 3, we took the 1%, which of course we want to be conservative. We don't want to inflate our numbers. And so when we're presenting our numbers, it's important to note that all of our numbers are very, very conservative. Steps were taken to obtain conservative benefit information. Like I said, minimum level of benefits was provided. All data and methods were reviewed and verified. We called back and talked to all of the champions that, presented, filled out the survey and the data that they presented, and we wanted to make sure their thought process were correct and the numbers were
So
correct.
how many years do you look at? Because something could last, many, many, many years.
We were trying to do 5 years.
5 years, okay.
5 years maximum, but
We
there are
just-
things that are ongoing,
We
like,
just
the
went with-
LiDAR studies, like ongoing.
We just went with whatever they felt comfortable.
Okay.
And so some they use 3 to 5 usually, but some of them were 10.
Some of them are just one.
What did LiDAR
depending.
come up with?
LiDAR, I think
Do you remember?
he said it was,
That one's gonna be there for a while.
when it implemented was a certain year, so we came back and that's 7 years, starting when it was implemented.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
Yeah,
Griffin did
there's
that.
no correct answer. We left it up to them.
yeah, but if they were asking us, we were trying to say,
Yeah.
let's stick it to 5 years.
Yeah, you can't let them say 50 years.
Yeah,
That's
we didn't want to go
conservative.
more than that.
Maybe you can for temporary markers. But other than that-
Yeah, so kind of that personal one.
Yeah.
Like earlier, Doug explained the percentage of some initiatives were used, and a range was given, and the lower value was input when the range was given. Here are all the different research project surveys that came back from the champions and in the different categories that I put them in. You can see the project number, which doesn't matter to Nathan. The titles there and the estimated benefits are there. There's more detail I have on how they came up with those numbers. And if you guys want to talk about those, we can go to the survey and see what they filled out. And all of those numbers are their numbers verified by us. So in materials and pavements, we've had how many?
About 43 million.
Yeah. We had 43 million. We had 5 projects, 3 foundation related, 2 concrete projects. Next. In maintenance, we had 4 projects, wide range of topics. The LiDAR was the big one. That's the one I was talking about earlier. And the total was 21.7 million in that category. The structures is the next one, and geotech. There were 9 projects, but 2 topics. So there were like 7 phases to one of them, as you can see, and 2 to the other. And the benefits were pretty great. 17.5 million. Cost savings to UDOT. So there's a lot of different things in there. 3 projects and 12.6 million. Next one is traffic and safety. They had a lot of projects, 8 projects, 2 left turns, 2 pedestrians, 2 wrong way studies, and it ended up being 15.7 million. The institutional knowledge benefits were 3 projects and about 200,000 benefits. And then benefits from 34 projects added up to 70, from the 73 surveys that went out, added up to $111.79 million that were calculated. And then we came up with what it cost. So we, of course, knew exactly what the contract costs were because they were given for 3 years. And then we kind of estimated kind of how many members we need for a technical advisory committee, 6 members, and their costs are like $60 an hour for 3 hours for estimate. And 5 meetings, they could be 4 or 6, but 57 projects, we ended up with 307,800 adding to the contract cost, plus the PM cost of 513 adding to the contract cost, came up with a total cost of 4.28 million.
Thanks
And
to
then-
David for most of that information.
Yeah, David gave us the cost for the 9,000, and that totally helped.
In the contract.
Yeah, the whole contract cost.
There's a team effort.
Keep it going.
So we just divided the two and came up with 26.1, and we were using 26 as the benefit to cost ratio for those years of studies. Which is, if you spend $1, you're gonna get $26 in return as a conservative effort. I'm sure there's more than that. Because there's so many projects that didn't get returned, and the more the surveys that got returned, the higher the benefits. As you can see in this chart. So the benefit to cost ratio per project type. This is, U-Track.
Yeah, these are the U-Track types. The ones we showed before were straight from the survey.
Right,
So those were more linked to assets and those kinds of things from the survey questions. But this one goes straight back to the U-Track breakout session.
so this helps you decide, or see what you're doing with your program.
It sure does. It was really surprising to me that traffic and safety wasn't at the very top.
Yes.
It was
we were
surprising
surprised
to me.
Yeah, because we give them a lot of money. They have more projects than any other group, yet they're not implementing at the same level.
Well, look what benefit you got back from maintenance with just 7 projects.
Yeah.
And 8 from structure.
I think traffic and safety, they go out on a little bit of a limb in trying things out.
Maybe.
Whereas, materials, you kind of know what they want there.
So these are listed in order from highest to lowest on the right side. And so you look at the top 3, and those are what I like to call hard research, where it's on the ground, it's pavements, it's structures,
So you get the most benefit.
it's plant mix seals, it's all the hard stuff. Planning is mostly soft. Traffic and safety can be a little of both. I mean, if you've got some islands or with some access management, that's hard research. But a lot of it's kind of fuzzy too in terms of policies and certain things. So traffic and safety is kind of a tweener. It's part hard and part soft. Public transportation, I don't know anything about that, but anyway, it came down. Aeronautics didn't have any projects. Environmental, we threw those in just as placeholders to show that there's 0. But definitely the 3 hard, it's interesting to see that the hard research is your highest benefit cost ratios, which I guess is natural. So your high value assets like pavements and structures, you should get more benefit back when you do research. So it makes sense.
Did we have no aeronautics or environmental projects in this round? Okay, so they didn't
Did
contribute.
you have a breakout session? That's the reason.
I don't
why
know,
it's there.
maybe not at those years. I'm not sure, but I just was wondering, did it contribute to the denominator?
Yes, of course. All the costs are shown up in the denominator.
Well, if there's 0 project, there's no
Right, there would.
Well,
It's not
yeah,
gonna
true.
be denominated.
That's true.
Okay.
You're fine.
Thanks.
It's just we're showing that there's 0 in aeronautics, there's no reason to have a breakout session.
Or maybe there is, I don't
You know
know.
what I
If you
mean?
want to encourage it, whatever.
Or if you want
But
to,
it's.
We do right now, but they were not in the years that you looked at.
Okay. Gotcha.
so that's also a reason for you to show why you're not having. You know what I mean? It's just for you to use for your benefit.
Oh, it's gonna be very,
It's
very
huge.
helpful for us to decide how much money we put into these different groups.
Mhm.
Somebody pointed out that some of that environmental stuff, is a little bit reflected in the above. Maintenance, of course, has to deal with environmental issues. Even a new pavement has to worry about wetlands and all that stuff. But no studies were done on specifically on wetland banking or anything like that, like we did back in my day.
Well, one thing that I want to say, Cameron, as you look at this, you're saying, okay, the top 3 are like hard dollars, you want to fund them more. But you have to look at the other ones like traffic and safety, and you have to balance it because they all
Yeah.
contribute a benefit to a whole program. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hard research is easy to come up with value. Soft research is hard to come up with value.
Right.
So they might have a hard time coming up with benefits because they have a hard time showing. And we don't know how to show them how. I don't know.
Right.
We
No, there's,
might need to do a better job of teaching them how to come up with benefits because it is soft,
Yeah,
you know,
every time we do one of these, it gets better, the survey gets better.
we learn more.
So Cameron, I have 2 questions for you on that sheet we're looking at. Oh, it just changed. One of them is just understanding this list. These are ones that you actually funded a project for that show up on this list, and this is not showing whether or not we did work in one of these particular areas within the state, correct?
well, all of these that have a good number on them shows that an implementation on a project did occur.
Okay. So like I know we did some wildlife study stuff this last year. They just didn't use your money, so it's 0 because they didn't use any U-Track money, right?
If they didn't use our money at all, David's looking at me because if they funded it and we managed it, then it would show up here. If it was just in the last year or 2, it's not on here because that wasn't the range of dates. We got to give it about 3 years before we look at implementation.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear in the messaging we have there, because there could be things in some of these areas that are being done. This is not representing all the type of research that could have been done then in the state. It's just representing those in which you managed and funded work for, right?
Yes, that's right.
Well, we do have the wildlife study, but when we ask about the benefits, it's that other graph that I presented went into asset, traffic improvement, institutional knowledge.
Right.
So it didn't come back to them. So
Interesting.
it is there, and we can figure out how to show it.
Maybe we need to, tweak the survey on the next one to make sure that doesn't happen.
Are we gonna have
Ask that
some time at the end of we only have 20 minutes left here.
Yeah.
So,
Just
maybe we don't have time today, but we need to have some conversations about the future.
Right, because if you don't ask that question, you don't get the answer.
Yeah, and that's why I just wanted clarification for what it was. And then the other comment I had here was you probably need to get with Winston in terms of this piece of information, because this is probably a piece that should be in the innovations and efficiencies list. And I haven't seen this set of data in there anywhere.
Yeah, this is actually a really good, it's innovative itself, and we've never reported on it. It's also motivational, and it definitely sets direction for what we should do in the future.
Yeah, so those were just my 2 comments for you. Thanks.
So as you go through the next, I don't know, you have about 20 more slides.
Yeah.
We'll,
We can go through
we'll
those
fail,
really
bro.
quick.
We'll make it.
So this.
Okay.
is
And then we can come
around-
back to any topic you want.
Yeah, can you,
We'll build it.
Nathan? Okay, so this is just a graphical image of earlier. Right?
Previous slide, right?
The other one shows.
So it's just in yellow, it just shows the benefits for each of the groups coming down in order of higher to lower compared to the number of projects that it took to get that number. So you can see that it didn't take a lot of projects to get those high benefits in the hard research part. Traffic
Yeah.
safety had a bunch of projects, still got pretty good benefits, but, and then they dropped down from there.
Okay, so these are the grades that were in the question, in the survey questions. And A is major impact. If you revise your specification, policy methods. B was significant impact, improved operations, procedural policy. C is contributed to state of practice or institutional knowledge. And D is unclear or contradicting findings, more study needed. E is a little bit something that we're going to talk about for this survey and for future surveys. It went out with no contribution and implementation not recorded, and Doug and I thought that that shouldn't be the definition.
We didn't catch that, we
Yeah.
botched it.
So next year we'll send out and we'll talk about this a little
We
bit
should have
later.
caught that before it went out. None of the other studies, none of the other 5 studies had that definition. for bed and grave.
Because no contribution doesn't mean that it failed.
Just because you didn't implement something doesn't mean you didn't learn something,
Right.
which maybe it should have been a C grade or something like that.
So we'll talk about that in a little while. So this is how it came out. The grades, materials and pavements had 5A, 1B, 4C, and the GPA on the right, 3.1. And this also shows your program, Cameron.
Yeah.
And then the total average is 2.5.
And that 4 failing grades, we looked at them and we think 3 of those 4 should have been probably C grades.
Because of the E that the way we defined it.
People said, well, we didn't implement something, so they put it as an E instead of something else like a C.
So it would have been a little bit higher, but we're gonna leave it at 2.5.
We think the actual number is closer to 3, but we didn't want to go change anybody's answers.
Here's your program balance, shows number of deliverables per different project type out of the 73. And how your funding and the projects came out percent.
This is basically where your money's going.
Where it went for the last
Yeah.
3 years.
Where it went.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's good information to go back and look at those breakout sessions and say we need more projects from this area and we're kind of overdoing it. And
There's probably another fraction or ratio that we could have that shows, you know, how you have a ratio for each of these groups. And here you're showing how we spend our money. So there might be another couple of ways to look at this. And Brad is working on our dashboard for implementation, and we will definitely have to decide how do we want to show that. Because right now you got to look at a couple of your tables to decide, are we distributing our money in the right way? And I'm not saying it all has to go to materials, because right here, you should just fund materials, you know. It's like,
yeah,
Right.
no, you can't think
Yeah,
that.
that is my point.
That kind of violates the strategic direction of the department.
Because you want to
Put all your
improve
eggs in one
everything.
basket. So this one, if you look at it, you know, it's a little bit unbalanced from a number of projects, which we sort of talked about before. But when you look at the funding, how the funding spread, it's really a nice spread. I think that really looks good.
Yeah.
from a program standpoint to show that the money is going out pretty even. That's kind of nice. All right, so these are ways that you want to look, probably want to look at program balance. Again, you want to link things back to the strategic direction to make sure all of your projects contribute there. The high value transportation, the big ticket items, probably you want to make sure that they're nicely funded. And then the problem solving versus new methods is kind of a ticklish thing. If you have, let's say, a design method and it just needs to be tweaked a little bit, then you're in this problem solving mode. Whereas if somebody might say, let's throw it away and get a whole new method, you have to kind of balance your projects between problem solving and new methods. So that's one thing to look at. Then you have the hard research, soft research, and policy research issues. National issues versus local issues is something to look at. And then applied research versus basic research. I don't think you ever want to make sure you never dip your toe in that basic research pond. And then here's 20 deliverable types that we put in the survey and asked people what their top 5 was, and just quickly scan through those. That's pretty diverse group of different kinds of deliverables that are possible. You know, manuals of instruction, policies, all those kinds of things, specs.
So basically, we gave them a list of those and said, choose 5.
Yeah.
And they all chose 5, and this is the order of how many, the highest one on top.
So amazing. Last time reports wasn't the top one, but everybody liked reports. But people kind of, you know, state of the practice policies, the good ones, specs, manuals of instruction or guide, design methods on down. But really, you have to offer every one of these types, because a person that deals with laboratory testing, for example, might not be the most popular one, but it's very important to a certain group of people. So you have to offer up in your problem statement and in your research contracts to make sure that your deliverables meet the needs of the people that are going to do the work or use the end results of the studies. So all of those are really valid. And then as far as the workshop is concerned, I think a nice touch would be to require benefits estimate and a benefit cost estimate within the problem statement. And then utilize it, not completely just utilize that one thing, but it would be one of the items you look at when you rate projects. And then possibly, here again, I'm kind of an implementation nut, but maybe use those breakout sessions to address implementation a little bit more. Maybe do some phase 2s of some of the projects to give some money to develop some user guides or some training or whatever. And then program some funds to do that implementation. This is kind of a busy slide, but it just shows the phases of a research project on the left, and then talks about how to tweak the plan as you go. And so there's to maybe formalize your implementation plan evolution as you go through the phases of your research, maybe formalize the thing a little bit and make sure that at a TAC meeting, for example, you talk about the plan. It should be one of your agenda items so that you're always talking about implementation, looking downstream. And this is even more busy, but again, this is a matrix that could be used by project managers, again, to formalize their activities. It talks about the personnel involved in each of the steps, what investments needed, the benefit, how accurate your benefit is would get more and more accurate as you go, but you'd still come up with it. Even in the TAC meetings, you talk about benefits in your TAC meetings, I think is a good thing. and then refine that benefit cost ratio estimate as you go. And then the research project management, the RPM's database, we're recommending that you implement into that database at 3 different stages of the project phase. Again, when you get that problem statement, benefits and benefit cost number, it would go into your RPMs and be loaded in there for information purposes. And as the study is completed, you get your deliverables, you would come in with a more accurate estimate of those benefits. And this talks about who's responsible and who's responsible to review and improve it. And then as implementation takes place, you put an actual number, an actual estimate of what those benefits and benefit cost ratio are into the RFP. So in conclusion, the benefits were 111 million, which is a great number. The benefit cost ratio was 26 based on the 4.28 million in costs. The benefit cost ratio of 26 is significantly higher than before, but we pointed out the reasons for that. The use of Google Forms was greatly improved, the survey completion and data processing. The surveys indicated a 2.5 or B- grade, but we had those 4 failing grades that were found to be inaccurate. This is definitely a conclusion we want to pay attention to. Program has been administered professionally. You guys should be very proud. And the program coincides with the department's strategic direction. The UTAC process and workshop is very successful, and you might want to improve it by adding in the benefits and the benefit cost ratio requirement statement. Your implementation, just make sure you focus on it as you go. Make sure that you are very professional, and you guys have done a great job, obviously, or you wouldn't have a 26 cost ratio. Just get as formal as you can with that. Benefits can be used to make decisions by UDOT. Benefit cost ratios as a policy, and we can talk about that later, but I just think that using a lot of information from the research projects can be used in setting policy and determining if you want to do things like median improvements. So recommendations, research should be fully funded based on that benefit cost ratio. Research managers should consider more formal process to enhance implementation. Utilize the program balance information to establish types of research activities that are the most effective. Continue UTRAC and dedicate time to identify initiatives related to implementation. Future studies should begin benefits gathering as the project is completed and should continue until implementation is achieved. So during project selection, we think that the voting process should use benefits and benefit cost ratios. During the work plan, as we pointed out, you would come up with, as you finalize your work plan, you would use those numbers. All my milestones, progress reports, and tech meetings should update the implementation plan and estimated benefits. And during the implementation phase, the PM should retain the deliverables in a process for a minimum of 2 years. And maybe even hold quarterly meetings to talk about each one of those. The 2 years is not an absolute number, if things are implemented more quickly. But it's nice to check back to we've had cases where something was implemented and you think you're done, and then you find out that they stopped using it for some reason. So it's nice to check back every time. Then you might want to consider developing a problem statement tutorial in the form of a video or an app or something like that to help people come up with those benefits. You know, as you make the problem statement more detailed, then you want to provide information to help them complete that input. And then the RPMs database, that's problem statement, work plan, and implementation phases should be populated. And then the definition of lead grade should be changed back to the wording that was used in previous surveys. Base it on tasks and objectives. Were the tasks and objectives completed? If yes, then it's not a failure, rather than base it on contributions and implementation.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. That was great. Appreciate you coming and delivering this in person too. You've given us quite a bit, good numbers and some great observations. I think we can work with some of the tables to possibly do a little bit more with our dashboard that we're still developing. We're just really beginning that thing now. And then we can use this to motivate the different groups that do research to help implement, because it supports themselves in getting money. You know, if we give them money and they never implement, you know, this is the kind of report that shows that's a bad investment. But we probably have to come up with reasons for why we invest in this broad spectrum, because you're not going to get the same ratio from the different groups. Does anybody else, especially online, have any questions for Doug or Shauna?
You know, this whole concept of using research as a percentage of a larger initiative, maybe you could reverse the whole process and say, if you are doing something out there, like implementing a new design method, what part of it can we help you with? We don't want them to do it for you. It's not often all or nothing thing. Is there some aspect of it that fits into the researchers' thing? You know, we bring money, we bring expertise, and maybe this little piece of that is a research thing. Maybe approach it that way. You might be able to get you put it during some of these.
You mean at the beginning,
Yeah, before they do it.
like at the problem statement?
Yeah.
Right.
Somebody brings a.
And so they bring a problem statement that says, we're doing this big thing, we want you to just do this last step. Yes.
I see.
So what portion of that is,
Right.
what portion of your big thing is this aspect?
That takes going out and finding out what things are coming down the mill. If you say, oh, there's this big initiative coming down the mill, what aspects of it fit under your program?
Is everyone so excited when they come with a problem statement? They're not as excited when it's all done and finished and 2 years later.
Yeah.
So it's good to have that thought process already
Yeah.
captured,
And
that we
we're,
can expand on.
any questions here in the room? I know that some people probably have to come to this conference room right now, it looks like. So, but we can leave the room. We'll end the meeting right now, and
Oh, is that on time?
we are right on time. So thank you, everybody. Nathan, Kevin, Joni, for joining us online, and appreciate all the support throughout this project.